When Emily first saw the faint pink lines appear on the pregnancy test, time stopped in the quiet California morning. She stood in her small bathroom, sunlight spilling through the half-closed blinds, the birds outside chirping like the universe was whispering. Everything is about to change. Emily pressed a hand to her chest, feeling her heartbeat thundering in disbelief, excitement, terror, and hope all at once. This wasn't just a moment. It was a beginning. She whispered, "I'm really pregnant," and she felt every part of her life shift toward a future she had only dreamed about. That night, when she told her husband Daniel, he froze for a second as if trying to understand the weight of the universe that had just landed in their living room. Then he wrapped her in his arms, laughing and crying at the same time, telling her over and over again, "We're going to be parents." I can't believe it. But with the joy came the sudden rush of worry. What should she eat? What shouldn't she? Should she exercise? Is coffee allowed? How much sleep does she need? What about all the things Google says are dangerous? Her mind became a whirlpool of questions and fears, because pregnancy wasn't just magic, it was responsibility, a kind of responsibility that lives inside your own body. That night, she lay in bed scrolling through articles, but the more she read, the more stressed she became, like every choice was a test she couldn't afford to fail. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I just want to do this right." That's when she made a promise to herself. This journey wouldn't be ruled by fear. It would be guided by understanding, love, and strength. She woke the next morning determined to learn the truth, not the internet myths. The first thing she discovered was surprisingly simple. Pregnancy isn't about perfection. It's about awareness. Her doctor told her gently, "Emily, pregnancy isn't a list of rules. It's a balance, what you should do to help your baby grow, and what you should avoid to keep them safe." Emily felt something inside her relax, as if she finally had permission to breathe. She began waking up earlier to take slow morning walks by the lake, the cool air soothing her nausea while giving her a sense of purpose. She learned that gentle movement wasn't just allowed, it was recommended. With each step, she imagined her baby growing stronger, like a tiny heartbeat syncing with her own. She swapped her strong morning coffee for a lighter breakfast tea, not because she was forced to, but because she wanted to support this new little life forming inside her. She learned her first big do choose foods that nourish you and your baby. She started adding fresh fruits, lean protein, whole grains, and colorful vegetables to her meals, each plate feeling like a small celebration of life. And then came her first real dawn tea. Don't overwhelm yourself with guilt. One evening, exhausted and craving something salty, she reached for a bag of chips and instantly felt guilty. But Daniel kissed her head and said, "You're growing a human. You're allowed to be human too." That sentence became her anchor. She learned to listen to her cravings but stay mindful. She learned to honor her exhaustion instead of blaming herself for it. As the first trimester unfolded, she started understanding the rhythm of pregnancy: the days when she felt sick, the days when she felt okay, and the days when her emotions felt like a storm she didn't ask for. The hormonal waves were real and raw, but with every up and down, she kept repeating to herself, "I'm doing my best. My best is enough." The nights were the hardest. She would wake up worrying about miscarriage, worrying about food she had eaten, worrying about sudden cramps or strange feelings in her body. Anxiety crept into her thoughts like shadows in a quiet room, but instead of letting it consume her, she began reading positive birth stories, listening to calming pregnancy affirmations, and writing little letters to her baby, telling them about the world they were going to enter, a world full of sunsets, music, laughter, kindness, and love. And somehow, writing those letters made the fear smaller. One night she whispered to her belly, "I'm going to protect you. I promise." Week by week, Emily realized pregnancy wasn't meant to be walked alone. She joined a community group for expecting mothers in Los Angeles, where women from all backgrounds shared their experiences. What helped them? What scared them? What made them feel strong? Some were single mothers, some were older, some younger, some had lost pregnancies before, some were navigating complicated lives. Yet in that room, everyone felt equal, united by the same miracle unfolding inside them. From those women, Emily learned one of the most important do's of her pregnancy: surround yourself with support. One mother in the group told her, "Your mind needs as much care as your body. Don't carry this journey alone." Emily carried those words close to her heart. By the time she entered week 10, she wasn't just a pregnant woman trying to figure things out. She was becoming a mother aware, strong, and learning. Her story was no longer about fear. It was about growth. Pregnancy is about loving someone you haven't even met yet so much that every choice you make becomes an act of hope. And that hope is what carried her into the next chapter of her journey. As the second trimester slowly approached, Emily felt her body shift into a softer, calmer rhythm, almost like the storm of the first few weeks had passed, and now her pregnancy was settling into a steadier heartbeat. The nausea began to fade bit by bit, and even the smallest bursts of energy felt like a miracle. One morning she woke up and realized she didn't feel sick, and she actually smiled at the sunlight instead of hiding from it. For the first time in weeks, she felt like herself again, except a new version of herself, someone stronger, someone more intuitive, someone growing not just a baby but a deeper sense of purpose. On one of her morning walks around Echo Park Lake, she paused at the water's edge, her hand resting gently on her small but noticeable bump. "We made it through the toughest part," she whispered, her voice trembling with relief. But with this new phase came new responsibilities, the next layer of do's and don'ts she needed to understand. At her doctor's appointment, she sat listening intently as her OB-GYN explained the importance of hydration, balanced meals, prenatal vitamins, and especially avoiding certain things that could silently cause harm. Emily wrote everything down, but this time, instead of panic, she felt empowered, like knowledge wasn't something to fear. It was something to use. She learned that she needed to avoid high-mercury fish and anything undercooked, and she found herself reading labels more thoughtfully, not obsessively. She learned that hot tubs and saunas were off limits now because of temperature risks, and as strange as it felt to give up her cozy winter sauna sessions, she knew this sacrifice meant safety, not loss. And every time she made a choice in favor of her baby, she felt like she was telling them, "I choose you again today." But it wasn't just the physical do's and don'ts, it was the emotional ones too. One evening, she sat on her couch feeling a wave of sadness for no reason at all, the kind that sneaks up out of nowhere. She felt guilty for feeling low when she was supposed to be grateful. But then she remembered something her doctor told her: pregnancy isn't one emotion, it's all of them. So she gave herself permission to cry, and afterward she felt lighter, as though she had made space inside herself for new beginnings. Daniel supported her silently, never pushing, never judging. Sometimes he would simply sit next to her, holding her hand, letting her know she wasn't alone in this growing, changing, evolving journey. They started creating tiny traditions to keep themselves grounded: evening walks, baby name lists, imagining who their child might become. Would they have Daniel's humor, Emily's quiet strength, or something completely their own? And every night, they placed a gentle hand on her belly and talked softly, even though they knew the baby couldn't hear well yet. It wasn't about what the baby could hear, it was about what Emily could feel. There was another important do she learned during this time: do listen to your body's limits. She had always been the type to push through long work hours, skipped meals, minimal rest, but pregnancy taught her something new. Rest is not laziness. Rest is creation. One afternoon she was organizing baby supplies they hadn't even bought yet, just imagining them, and she suddenly felt dizzy. Instead of brushing it off like the old her would have, she sat down, breathed, and reminded herself that slowing down wasn't failing. It was protecting the little life depending on her. She also learned a major don't compare your pregnancy to anyone else's. One of the mothers from her support group posted pictures online showing a perfectly shaped bump, glowing skin, and a home filled with baby items already prepared. Emily found herself feeling behind, but then another mom shared her swollen ankles, messy house, and exhaustion. Both stories were real, both were true. And Emily began to understand that pregnancy wasn't a competition or a performance, it was a deeply personal journey shaped by each woman's body, history, and heart. Still, there were moments of fear. Late one night, she felt a strange cramp and instantly spiraled into anxiety. Her heart raced as the room grew colder around her. But instead of rushing to the emergency room, she called her nurse hotline. "Cramping can be completely normal," the nurse said gently, "as long as it's not severe or accompanied by bleeding. Your uterus is stretching. Your baby is growing." Just hearing those words calmed her. "Your baby is growing." She repeated it like a mantra. A few weeks later, something happened that changed everything. She felt the first flutter. It was so faint she almost didn't notice it, like the softest brush of wings inside her. She froze, breath caught in her throat, her hand instinctively covering her belly. "Was that you?" she whispered. It happened again, a tiny, miraculous flutter, and her eyes filled with warm tears. It felt like her baby was reaching out to her from the inside, saying, "I'm here, Mom," she told Daniel, and he held her face with both hands, eyes shining. "I can't wait to feel it too," he said softly. From that moment on, every flutter, every nudge, every tiny movement became a reminder that this journey wasn't theoretical anymore, it was real. A little life with a little heartbeat was dancing inside her, growing because of every choice she made. And with that realization, her sense of responsibility grew deeper, but so did her sense of confidence. She was no longer the terrified woman staring. As Emily moved deeper into her second trimester, something inside her shifted, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. She began to feel more connected to her baby, like an invisible thread tied their hearts together long before she would ever hold them in her arms. Her world felt fuller, richer, softer, as if every moment now carried weight and meaning. Even ordinary things like folding laundry or pouring a glass of water suddenly felt like acts of preparation rather than chores. But with this new sense of closeness came a new wave of responsibility, because every doctor appointment, every ultrasound, every heartbeat she heard through the monitor reminded her that her choices shaped her baby's world. During her 20-week scan, she lay on the exam table, cold gel on her belly, the dim room humming quietly while the ultrasound technician moved the wand across her skin. And then it happened. The screen flickered with the shape of a tiny face, tiny fingers, little legs curled gently as if asleep. Emily gasped softly, tears gathering instantly, because this wasn't just an idea anymore. It was a person, her baby, a real, breathing life, growing inside her. Daniel squeezed her hand, shaking from the inside out, whispering, "I can't believe that's ours." The technician smiled, saying everything looked healthy, and Emily closed her eyes in pure gratitude. But afterward, as they walked to the parking lot, the doctor's voice echoed in her mind. "Now is a good time to start thinking about your third trimester habits. The do's and don'ts get even more important as the baby grows." Those words stayed with her, not as fear, but as guidance. So she began adjusting her routines carefully. She learned she had to avoid sleeping on her back now, something she had naturally done her whole life. But she practiced side sleeping with pillows cushioned around her like soft guardians. She discovered she should avoid heavy lifting, which meant Daniel took over the grocery bags, the laundry baskets, anything that weighed more than a few pounds. And although Emily felt guilty at first, he would always say the same thing: "You're doing the hard part. Let me do the easy part." One of her most important lessons during this time came from her childbirth educator, who said, "Do protect your peace. Don't invite stress into your womb." Emily had never thought of stress as something her baby could feel, but suddenly it made sense. Babies grow inside the emotional environment you create, so she stopped forcing herself into draining conversations, reduced work hours when possible, and learned to say no without apologizing. She created small rituals: warm baths, soft music, evening journaling to ground herself when her mind felt chaotic. She wrote love letters to her baby, describing sunsets, describing the world waiting for them, describing the type of mother she hoped to be. And every word felt like a seed planting itself into her future. But it wasn't all calm. There were new challenges too. Her back began to ache, her feet swelled by evening, and sometimes she felt breathless even after simply climbing stairs. Nights became complicated: the constant need to pee, the struggle of turning from one side to another, the restless thoughts that came creeping in the dark. But each symptom came with a new lesson, a new do or don't for pregnancy safety. When she felt exhausted, she learned to listen, not push. When she felt round ligament pain sharp, stretching tugs near her belly, she learned to breathe through it, knowing it was a sign of her body making room for her growing miracle. And when she developed cravings at odd hours, like the night she desperately wanted a cheeseburger at 11:30 p.m., she realized cravings were normal, but balance mattered. Daniel laughed as he drove to a late-night diner, saying, "If our kid loves cheeseburgers, we'll know why." The emotional changes were just as real. Some days she felt so happy she couldn't stop smiling. Other days she felt overwhelmed, worried about labor, worried about being a good mother, worried about the unknown. Her doctor had warned her that even positive change can feel heavy sometimes. So Emily learned another vital truth: Do express your feelings. Don't bottle them up. She talked more openly with Daniel, her mom, her friends, and the women in her pregnancy group who instantly understood. Their shared stories reminded her she wasn't alone. Millions of women had walked this path, felt these feelings, faced these worries, and come out stronger. And then came one of the most unforgettable moments of her pregnancy. The night Daniel felt the baby kick for the first time. They were lying on the couch, watching a movie, her head resting on his chest, when the baby kicked hard enough to ripple beneath her skin. Emily gasped, grabbed Daniel's hand, and pressed it to her belly. A second later, a tiny thump. Daniel froze, eyes wide, his voice cracking as he whispered, "I felt them. I really felt them." He held her face, kissed her cheeks, and they both cried softly, overwhelmed by love for someone they had not yet met. From that day onward, every movement felt like a secret conversation between mother and child. Every nudge, every kick, every stretch felt like the baby saying, "I'm growing. I'm learning you. I'm waiting to meet you." But as the baby grew stronger, Emily learned another critical don't ignore your instincts. One afternoon, she felt unusually tired, not normal pregnancy tired, but something deeper, heavier. Her gut whispered something wasn't right. Even though part of her didn't want to overreact, she chose to listen. She called her doctor, who encouraged her to come in. It turned out her iron levels were low, something common but important, and catching it early helped avoid bigger complications. Her doctor smiled and said, "You did the right thing. A mother's intuition begins long before birth." That moment changed Emily. She realized being a mother wasn't about knowing everything, it was about listening, learning, and trusting the signals her body and heart were giving her. And as she entered the next phase of her pregnancy, she knew the journey was only getting deeper, more emotional, and more transformative. She could feel herself becoming someone new, someone strong, someone capable, someone ready. Little did she know, the third trimester would test her in ways she never expected and teach her the most powerful do's and don'ts. As Emily entered her third trimester, everything suddenly felt more real, heavier, closer, like the countdown had quietly begun without her noticing. Her belly had grown round and full, her movements slower and more intentional, and each day she found herself instinctively preparing for the moment she would finally meet the little soul who had been fluttering, kicking, and rolling inside her for months. The California air felt different now, colder in the mornings, softer in the evenings, and every sunset painted the sky in warm colors that made her think of warmth, comfort, and the home she was building for her baby. But this trimester also came with its own set of do's and don'ts that carried even more importance, not just for her physical safety but for her emotional balance as well. Her doctor gently explained the significance of monitoring fetal movements, staying hydrated, and avoiding long periods of standing, reminding her that the final weeks could be beautiful but demanding. Emily listened closely, taking everything to heart, but she also started discovering her own rhythms, her own instincts guiding her through the unfamiliar. She noticed the baby had a routine now: tiny kicks in the morning, gentle nudges after meals, and energetic flips right before bed, like they were settling in for the night. She found herself smiling every time, placing her hand on her belly and whispering, "We're almost there." But with the beauty came the discomforts she hadn't fully expected. Sleeping became a challenge, each night a struggle to find a position that didn't make her hips ache or her back tighten. She stacked pillows around her like fort walls, trying to support her belly, her legs, her aching shoulders. Sometimes she'd wake up breathless, overwhelmed by the weight of her own body, but then the baby would move, and it was like a reminder in the dark, "I'm here with you." That little reassurance made the hard nights easier to bear. Swelling became another silent companion of late pregnancy. Her fingers puffed slightly, her rings no longer fitting, her ankles disappearing by evening. She joked to Daniel that she had balloon legs, and he always made her laugh, telling her she was the cutest balloon he'd ever seen. But privately, she sometimes stared at her reflection with uncertainty. Her body was beautiful, but different, stretched and reshaped in ways she never imagined. It took time to accept that this transformation was not something to judge, but something to honor. She learned another important do during this time: do speak kindly to yourself. Her body wasn't failing, it was creating. Every mark, every ache, every change was a sign of life growing inside her. But she also had to accept one of the most underestimated don'ts of pregnancy: don't push yourself past your limit. During one grocery trip, she insisted on walking the whole store, believing she could handle it. Halfway through, her back seized with a sharp pain, and she felt dizzy. Daniel rushed to her, guiding her to sit on a bench near the checkout. She felt embarrassed, frustrated, but he looked at her with so much love and said, "This isn't weakness. This is motherhood." His words softened the guilt she carried, and she promised herself she would listen to her body more carefully. As the weeks continued, the emotional part of pregnancy intensified. The excitement grew, but so did the anxiety. Some nights she lay awake imagining what labor would feel like, the contractions, the fear, the unknown, and she wondered if she was strong enough. Her birthing classes helped teach her breathing techniques, pain management tips, and positions that could ease delivery. But the real comfort came from hearing other women share their birth stories. Some were quick and peaceful, others long and difficult, but every story had the same ending: a baby in their arms and a mother stronger than she ever knew she could be. Emily began repeating to herself, "My body knows what to do. My baby knows what to do." This gentle affirmation slowly replaced the fear with trust. She and Daniel started preparing the nursery together, assembling the crib, folding tiny onesies, and stacking little socks in neat rows that made Emily's heart melt every time she looked at them. They painted the walls a soft shade of sage green, a calming, earthy color that made the room feel like a sanctuary. Emily would sit in the rocking chair for long stretches, imagining herself holding her newborn, imagining the quiet hum of the night, the softness of baby breaths against her chest. She dreamed of reading bedtime stories, of little fingers gripping hers, of all the firsts that were waiting. It was in those quiet moments that she realized motherhood had already begun. It wasn't a role that started at birth. It was something that had been growing inside her from the moment she saw those two pink lines. But there was one moment that truly changed everything. One evening she felt the baby move in a way she had never felt before, a slow, powerful stretch followed by a firm press toward her ribs. It wasn't painful, just different, like the baby was exploring their little world. She placed both hands on her belly, closed her eyes, and felt a warmth spread through her chest. She whispered, "I love you. I love you so much." And in that moment, it hit her: love wasn't waiting at the end of pregnancy. Love was happening now. Love had been happening all along. But late pregnancy also came with important don'ts, like avoiding dehydration, avoiding sudden movements, avoiding stress whenever possible. Her doctor stressed the importance of kick counts, reminding her that movement was communication. And Emily took this seriously, tuning into her baby every day, making sure their rhythm was steady. She also learned to prepare her hospital bag early, because sometimes babies don't wait for the due date. Folding the baby blanket made her cry unexpectedly, overwhelmed by the reality of becoming a mother so soon. Daniel held her gently, wiping her tears and whispering, "We're ready. You're ready." She wasn't sure if he was right, but she hoped he was. As the final weeks approached, the anticipation grew, but so did her realization that pregnancy wasn't just about bringing a baby into the world. It was about becoming someone new herself. The journey had shaped her, softened her, strengthened her, and awakened something inside her she never knew. As the final month of pregnancy approached, Emily felt time bending in strange ways. Some days moved painfully slow, while others slipped away before she could even process them. Every morning she woke with a mixture of excitement and fear swirling inside her, like two tides crashing in the same ocean. Her belly felt heavier now, beautifully round and firm, her baby shifting and rolling as if they were preparing for their own journey into the world. She found herself walking through the house more slowly, her hand unconsciously resting on her bump for balance and comfort, whispering little things like, "We're getting close, and I can't wait to meet you." The air around her felt charged, like every moment was suspended between what was and what was about to be. Her doctor appointments became weekly now, each one filled with check-ins, measurements, and careful reminders about the final do's and don'ts of late pregnancy. Do monitor your baby's movements. Do rest often. Do keep yourself nourished, her doctor would say with reassuring calmness. And then came the important don'ts. Don't ignore any sudden changes. Don't push through severe pain. Don't hesitate to call if your instincts tell you something feels off. These instructions weighed on her, but not in a way that scared her, more in a way that reminded her how close she was to holding her child. Emily tried to stay calm, but the closer her due date came, the more her emotions spilled over without warning. At night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining the moment she would hear her baby's first cry. She feared the pain of labor, yes, but she feared the unknown even more. Would she be strong enough? Would she know what to do? Would everything go smoothly? And every time these thoughts overwhelmed her, she placed her hands on her belly and breathed slowly, letting her baby's movements reassure her in a way nothing else could. One evening, she sat in the nursery, rocking gently in the chair they had picked out months earlier. The room smelled faintly of baby lotion and the soft cotton of freshly washed onesies, the crib standing ready with a warm blanket folded neatly inside. She held a tiny pair of socks in her hands, marveling at how something so small could change her life so profoundly. Tears slipped from her eyes, not from sadness, but from awe, from gratitude, from the overwhelming truth that her life was expanding into something bigger than she had ever known. "I'm going to be your mom," she whispered into the quiet room, "and I promise I'm going to do my best." But even with the beauty, late pregnancy had its own challenges that tested her patience and strength. Braxton Hicks' contractions started tight, breath-stealing squeezes that made her stop mid-step. Some were mild, others made her catch her breath in surprise. Her doctor had warned her, "Do hydrate, and don't panic if they're irregular. Your body is practicing." Practicing. The idea made her smile softly. Even her body was preparing for the day everything would change. Her feet swelled more now, sometimes so much that even her softest shoes felt tight. She shuffled more than walked, her lower back aching like someone had tied a heavy strap around her hips. But through all of it, she stayed gentle with herself, reminding herself that discomfort wasn't weakness, it was evidence of transformation, proof that her body was doing sacred work. Daniel became even more attentive during these weeks, watching her closely with a mix of protectiveness and awe. He cooked her meals when her energy dipped, massaged her swollen feet without her even asking, and read articles about labor and delivery so he could help her in any way possible. One night, as they lay in bed, he placed his hand on her belly and whispered softly, "I'm so proud of you." Emily felt tears rise instantly. Those words filled a space inside her she didn't even know was empty. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly, her voice barely above a breath. Daniel shifted closer, wrapping his arms around her carefully, mindful of her belly. "I know," he replied, "but you're stronger than you think. And you're not doing this alone." His voice steadied her in a way nothing else could. Still, fear wasn't the only thing filling her heart. There was something deeper, something almost holy: anticipation. Every time her baby hiccuped or stretched, she wondered what their face would look like, what their cry would sound like, what it would feel like to finally hold them skin to skin. Sometimes she would stand in front of the mirror, her silhouette round and glowing in the warm bedroom light, and she'd think, "This is the last time in my life I'll experience something like this," and that realization made her cherish each moment more deeply. She learned one of the most powerful do's of late pregnancy: do allow yourself to feel everything. The joy, the fear, the discomfort, the longing. Every feeling was part of the journey, part of the story she would someday tell her child. And the biggest don't became clear too. Don't try to control everything. Labor could come early or late. It could be short or long. It could follow the birth plan or take completely unexpected turns. And trying to predict or control the timeline only created anxiety. So she practiced surrender, trusting her body, trusting the process, trusting that when the moment arrived, she would rise to it just like millions of mothers before her. By week 38, every sensation felt like a question. A tightness, was that a contraction? A pang, was that a sign? A strange pressure in her lower belly, was that the beginning? Time stretched thin with anticipation, and yet the days passed. Her hospital bag stood ready by the door, her anxiety rising and falling like tides, but beneath it all was a steady whisper inside her heart: "You can do this." The night everything changed began quietly, almost a quietly, the kind of stillness that feels like the world is inhaling and holding its breath. Emily woke around 2 a.m., with an unusual pressure low in her belly, not sharp, not painful, just different enough to pull her from sleep. She shifted slowly, expecting it to fade like all the other late pregnancy aches. But then another wave tightened across her abdomen, stronger this time, making her exhale through pursed lips. She sat up, heart beginning to race, realizing this sensation didn't feel like another practice contraction. This felt deeper, heavier, like her body was opening a door that had been closed for 9 months. She whispered Daniel's name, her voice trembling not from pain but from the weight of the moment. He jolted awake instantly, eyes wide, instincts kicking in before his thoughts even caught up. "Is it time?" he asked, and she nodded, not with certainty but with a kind of instinctual recognition. They had read about this moment, prepared for it, talked endlessly about what it might feel like, yet now that it was here, nothing felt rehearsed. Everything felt real, raw, immediate. She tried to stand, but another contraction rolled through her, stronger, firmer, like a hand gripping her from the inside. She gripped the edge of the bed, breathing slowly, just like she practiced, and Daniel supported her, whispering steady encouragement even as his own heart pounded. When the wave passed, they moved together, slow, deliberate, almost sacred movements as he grabbed the hospital bag, double-checked the essentials, and helped her slip into the most comfortable clothes she could manage. Each step felt heavier now, each breath deeper, each minute stretching long and thin. By the time they reached the car, the contractions were coming with a rhythm her body couldn't ignore. She held the door frame for support, whispering, okay, I can do this," and Daniel helped her inside, fastening her seatbelt with shaking hands he tried so hard to steady. The quiet streets blurred past as they drove through the night, streetlights glowing hazy through the misty windows. Emily rested her head back, breathing through each wave while Daniel kept glancing over, torn between watching the road and watching the woman he loved transform before his eyes. When they arrived at the hospital, nurses moved quickly, guiding Emily into a wheelchair despite her attempt to walk on her own. "You've got this," one nurse assured her, a warm smile softening the intensity of the moment. Once inside a room, monitors were placed, vitals checked, soothing voices and medical beeps filling the space. Everything felt surreal, too bright, too loud, too fast, yet underneath all of it, Emily felt a profound sense of surrender, like her body was stepping into a role it had known long before her mind understood it. Contractions deepened, each one demanding her full attention. She gripped the betrayal, eyes closed, breath trembling. But between each wave, she found brief pockets of calm, moments where she could look at Daniel and draw strength from the fear in his eyes mixed with unwavering faith in her. Hours blurred into a haze of intensity and courage. The pain was unlike anything she had ever imagined, not sharp like she expected, but deep, primal, all-encompassing, as if her bones and muscles and soul were opening simultaneously. She cried once, not from fear but from pure overwhelm. Daniel held her hand the entire time, whispering, "You're doing amazing. Keep breathing. I'm right here." His voice became her anchor. As labor progressed, Emily reached a point where she felt she had nothing left to give, her strength thinning like a frayed rope. "I can't," she whispered through tears, shaking her head as another contraction crested. But her nurse leaned close, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You can. Your body knows exactly what to do. Trust it." Something in those words unlocked a new kind of strength inside her, not loud, not bold, but steady, ancient, powerful. When the moment finally came, when her body shifted from contraction to instinct, everything inside her focused into a single purpose. She pushed through pain, through exhaustion, through fear, guided by the quiet belief that on the other side of this moment was the child she had loved long before she ever saw them. The room filled with urgent encouragement, voices blending into a rhythm she pushed to. Daniel's voice trembled as he whispered, "You're so strong. You're almost there." Then came the final push, a moment that felt like the world itself cracked open, and then suddenly, impossibly, beautifully, the room shifted. The cries of a newborn filled the air. Emily's breath caught as emotion surged up her throat like a tidal wave. The doctor lifted their baby into the warm, bright world, tiny and perfect and impossibly real. Emily sobbed, a sound born from relief, love, disbelief, and every emotion she had carried for months. They placed the baby on her chest, skin to skin, warm and soft and small. In that instant, everything else disappeared. Time stopped, pain dissolved, fear vanished. All that remained was the indescribable weight of her baby curled against her, their tiny heartbeat matching hers as if they had always been one. "Hi," she whispered through tears, her voice breaking as she stroked the baby's cheek. "I've been waiting for you." Daniel leaned over them, his tears falling freely now, his hands gently cradling both of them as if they were the most fragile, precious things he had ever touched. In that moment, he finally understood what love in its purest form felt like, not the romantic kind, not the predictable kind, but the kind that reshapes a person from the inside out. Hours later, after the room had quieted and the adrenaline softened into a peaceful haze, Emily lay in the soft hospital dimness with her baby asleep on her chest. She felt a powerful mix of exhaustion and joy, a sense of accomplishment greater than anything she'd ever known. She had crossed the threshold, walked through the fire, surrendered to the unknown, and emerged with the greatest gift of her life. All the do's and don'ts, all the fears, all the hopes, all the long nights and joyful moments had led here, to this tiny heartbeat, this new life, this new version of herself. And as she closed her eyes, holding her child close, she felt a quiet truth settle deep inside her. She was